The hands I once held to teach him balance, the same hands I bandaged after he tumbled off his bike, those were the hands that signed the papers. The same hands that pushed me through the doors of a place I swore I'd never see from the inside. They say home is where the heart is. But what happens when the very person who holds your heart, the one you brought into this world, decides you don't deserve a home anymore? What happens when your own son calls you a burden, locks you away, and steals not just your house, but who you are? This isn't just a story about getting old. This is a story about a quiet war, fought from a sterile room with cold linoleum floors. This is the story of how I started fighting back. They always tell you to look out for strangers, don't they? They warn you about scams and smooth-talking con artists. But no one ever tells you what to do when the real danger is already inside your house. No one tells you that the person most likely to hurt you isn't a stranger at all. In nearly 60% of elder abuse cases, the abuser is a member of the family. 2/3 of the time, it's one of their own children or their spouse. I'm one of those statistics. My name is Edith Green, and my only son, Marcus, tried to have me erased. My house wasn't just made of wood and plaster. It was a living, breathing album of my life. Every little scuff on the hallway floor was from Marcus racing his toy cars when he was a boy. That faint stain on the living room ceiling? That was from the time we popped a champagne bottle to celebrate his high school graduation. And it took off with a little more excitement than we expected. The rose bushes in the garden were my absolute pride and joy. I planted them the year my husband David passed away. They were my way of remembering our love, and tending to them felt like my daily chat with him. After David was gone, it was just me and Marcus. I poured everything I had into that boy. My time, my affection, and yes, my money. I helped him with the down payment for his first apartment, co-signed on his car loan, and always had a hot meal ready whenever life got to be too much for him. I didn't just see him as my son. He was my legacy, the one who would carry on our family's memories. And I truly believed he was a good son. He'd call every Sunday without fail. He'd bring my wonderful grandson, Leo, over for the holidays. We had a rhythm, you know? A life that felt safe and comfortable. I was happy. I had my home, my garden, my memories, and what I thought was the solid, unwavering love of my child. I was living my golden years, completely unaware that the gold was starting to flake away. I never, not in a million years, imagined the person I trusted most would be the one to bring it all crashing down. The change was sneaky at first, like how you don't notice the days getting shorter until one day it's just dark. It started with little comments, small, sharp words that chipped away at my confidence. "Mum, are you sure you should be climbing that ladder to trim the hedges?" He'd ask, his voice coated in a layer of concern that just felt off. It wasn't gentle, it was impatient. Then it got worse. "You're getting so forgetful, Mum. You paid the electric bill twice." I knew I hadn't, but when I pulled out the bank statement to prove it, he just waved his hand. "Don't worry about it. Just let me handle the finances from now on. It's too much for you. It's a burden." That word, burden, it just hung in the air between us. He started using it all the time. Me wanting help in the garden was a burden. Me wanting to host Christmas dinner was a burden. It started to feel like my very existence was a weight he was getting tired of carrying. Then he started to isolate me, slowly and deliberately. Friends would call, and he'd tell them I was not feeling well or resting. He convinced me to give up driving for my own safety, which left me stuck and completely dependent on him for everything. I felt this cold knot of dread growing in my stomach, but I kept pushing it down. "This is Marcus," I'd tell myself. my boy. He's just stressed out from work. I made a million excuses because the truth was just too horrible to even think about. I know now that what he was doing is a classic form of emotional abuse. The belittling, the threats, the isolation. It's a quiet poison, and I was drinking it every single day, served up by the person I loved more than anyone. He kept telling me I was incompetent, and a little part of me, worn down by it all, was actually starting to believe him. The day he took me away was a sunny Tuesday. I remember thinking I needed to water the roses. Marcus showed up out of the blue, his face a perfect mask of sincerity. "Mum, I found a wonderful place for you," he said, his voice as smooth as anything. "A beautiful community? Just for a little while. A sort of respite. You need a break, and honestly, so do I." He talked about it like it was a spa retreat. He lied. He told me to pack a small bag, just enough for a weekend. I felt this scream building in my throat, but he put a hand on my shoulder, and his grip was shockingly firm. "Don't make a scene, Mom. It's for the best." His eyes were like ice. All the warmth I'd known my whole life was just gone. The betrayal of that trust is devastating, and it leaves deep psychological scars. The car ride is a blur. The silence was heavier than any argument could have ever been. The so-called respite was a nursing home. It smelled like disinfectant and hopelessness. A woman with a clipboard and a tired, practiced smile met us at the door. Marcus handed her a thick folder. Inside it, I found out later, was a fraudulent power of attorney, papers he had tricked me into signing weeks before, telling me they were just for his peace of mind. This kind of financial exploitation, using forged or misrepresented documents, is a frequent and devastating form of elder abuse. He walked me to a tiny beige room. It had a bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. "I'll be back on Sunday," he said, not even looking at me. He gave me a kiss on the forehead, a Judas kiss that felt like ice on my skin, and just like that, he was gone. The click of the door locking echoed in that sterile room. It was the sound of my world ending. I wasn't Edith Green anymore, the woman with a house full of memories and roses. I was a resident, a number, a problem that had just been solved. Those first few weeks were a nightmare. I was just drowning in grief and shock. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger, her eyes so hollow with pain it actually hurt. This is common. Victims of elder abuse often suffer from higher rates of depression. I was surrounded by people, but I had never felt so utterly alone. Of course, Marcus didn't come back on Sunday. He didn't answer my calls. He had just vanished, taking my home, my money, and my dignity with him. The staff here weren't mean, not really. They were just overworked and didn't seem to care. They saw me as just another case of a family doing the right thing for a confused old parent. I knew I had the right to be treated with dignity and make my own choices, but those rights felt like a joke. Federal law is supposed to protect nursing home residents from abuse, but when the abuser is the one holding all the cards with a power of attorney, those rights feel a million miles away. For a month, I let myself fall apart. I ate what they put in front of me, slept when they told me to, and just stared at that brick wall, my mind replaying Marcus's betrayal over and over. But then, one afternoon, I overheard two aides talking down the hall. "That Edith in 3B?" one of them said. "Her son sold her house already. Didn't waste any time." Something inside me just snapped. The grief that had been smothering me caught fire and turned into this cold, hard anger. He sold my house, my home, David's roses. In that exact moment, the victim in me died, and a warrior was born. He thought he'd taken everything, but he forgot about the one thing he couldn't touch: my mind. He thought he had buried me, but he didn't realize he'd just planted a seed. My silent war was just getting started. My first act of rebellion was tiny. I asked a sweet night shift aide, a young woman named Maria, if she could buy me a notebook and some pens on her way in. She did, and didn't ask any questions. That notebook became my weapon. It was my war room. It was everything. I started writing down everything. Federal law says nursing home residents have a right to privacy in their communications, and I used that. I documented every single interaction with the staff, the date, the time, who it was. I wrote down every pill they gave me. I noted every time they dismissed me, every unanswered call button, that general feeling of being ignored. Then, I started working on Marcus. I put on a performance. I became the confused, fragile mother he wanted me to be. When he finally showed up weeks later, holding a stack of papers to tie up some loose ends, I played my part perfectly. I'd act confused, make him explain things over and over, and then, pretending to be tired, I'd ask him to just leave the papers so I could look at them when I had more energy. His arrogance was his downfall. He bought it completely. The second he was gone, I would write. I documented every lie, every little manipulation. I copied down the names of the companies on the letterheads he left, every account number I could see, every single detail of the financial empire he was trying to steal from me. Keeping detailed records is a crucial step for victims of financial abuse, and my notebook was becoming a fortress of evidence. But my most important move was calling my old lawyer, Mr. Davies. I scraped together what little pocket change I had and used the payphone in the common room, a place no one ever pays attention to. The call was short, but my message was urgent. Mr. Davies, it's Edith Green. Marcus has put me in a home. He's taken everything. I need your help. It was a total shot in the dark, but it was the first real shot I'd fired in a battle I was now determined to win. Mr. Davies was a godsend. I hadn't seen him in years, but he had helped David and me with our original wills. My story pulled him right out of his semi-retirement. He came to the nursing home, not as a family member, but as my legal counsel. Federal law gives residents the right to private visits with anyone they choose, especially their attorney. We met in a stuffy little conference room, and I handed him my notebook. As he read through it, I saw his face change from simple concern to disbelief, and finally, to this grim, steely determination. "Edith," he said, his voice low and serious. "This is a detailed account of theft, coercion, and fraud." And just like that, the legal battle was on. Mr. Davies filed an emergency petition to challenge the power of attorney, arguing that Marcus had tricked me into signing it under false pretenses. My notebook was our Exhibit A. It showed a clear timeline, a pattern of his behavior, and proved that my mind was perfectly sound, which blew his claims of me being incompetent right out of the water. The whole process was slow and, honestly, agonizing. There were hearings I couldn't go to and legal terms I didn't understand. Marcus, of course, fought back. His lawyer tried to paint me as a confused, ungrateful mother who was a danger to herself. He used the very depression and grief that he had caused as proof that I was unstable. It was a nasty, ugly fight. But every day, our case got a little bit stronger. Mr. Davies's investigators found the record of my house sale. They traced my money moving into accounts that only Marcus controlled. The evidence of financial exploitation, which robs seniors of billions of dollars every year, was right there in black and white. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every older person who had been silenced, dismissed, and stolen from by the people they should have been able to trust the most. My story is just one of far too many. It's shocking, but for every single case of elder abuse that actually gets reported, experts estimate that as many as 24 other cases go completely unnoticed. So many people suffer in silence, either too ashamed or too scared to speak out. If any of this sounds familiar, if it's happening to you or someone you know, please understand that there is help out there. Places like the National Council on Aging and your local adult protective services are there to support you. Bringing this hidden epidemic out of the shadows by sharing these stories is the first, most important step. Please, share this video. You truly never know whose life you might change. The day of the final hearing was grey and miserable, a perfect match for the anxiety twisting in my gut. I sat next to Mr. Davies, my hands wrapped around that beat-up old notebook that started it all. Marcus sat across the room, refusing to even look at me. He looked smaller somehow, not so powerful anymore. The judge was a no-nonsense woman with sharp, intelligent eyes. She went through all the evidence piece by piece. She read passages from my notebook aloud. She looked at the bank records. She listened as Mr. Davies laid out the undeniable pattern of lies and financial abuse. Finally, she gave her ruling. The power of attorney was declared null and void, a product of fraud. All of my assets were to be returned to my control, effective immediately, and the district attorney's office was to open an investigation into Marcus for elder financial exploitation. It's possible to get stolen assets back, but you have to be willing to fight for it. A wave of relief so strong it nearly knocked the wind out of me washed over me. I'd won. I had faced the man who tried to erase me, and I had won. It wasn't a loud, fist-pumping kind of victory. It was a quiet, deep, profound feeling of reclaiming myself. I felt the crushing weight of the past year just lift off my shoulders. That verdict wasn't just a piece of paper. It was my name, my freedom, and my soul being handed back to me. I walked out of that courthouse not as resident 3B, but as Edith Green, whole, and finally, free. My newfound freedom was sweet, but it was also complicated. My house, the one Marcus had sold, was legally mine again after a long civil process. But could I really go back? I stood on the sidewalk one afternoon, just looking at it. It was the same house, but it felt tainted. The memories were still there, of course, but now they were all layered with the ghost of his betrayal. Walking back through that front door would feel like walking back onto a crime scene. I couldn't do it. Going back would mean trying to piece together a life that didn't exist anymore. I needed a fresh start, not a painful, constant reminder of what he'd done. And that's when I saw it. A for sale sign on the lawn of the house right next door. An idea, a bold and maybe even a little bit crazy idea, sparked in my mind. The house was smaller, more manageable, and it had a lovely little patch for a garden that got plenty of morning sun. Mr. Davies thought I was joking at first, but when he saw the look in my eyes, he just smiled and made the call. A week later, I was the owner. It was a move that I think completely baffled Marcus, who was now drowning in his own legal and financial mess. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about reclamation. It was a statement. He couldn't force me out of my own life. I chose to move, on my own terms, right next door. He wasn't going to be able to forget what he did. Every morning when he looked out his window, if he even got to keep the house, he would see me, living, thriving. He tried to make me invisible, and instead, I became his permanent, unavoidable neighbour. My new life started with a shovel and a dozen baby rose bushes. As I dug into the fresh dirt of my new garden, it felt like I was planting new roots for myself. My grandson, Leo, came to help me. His parents were in the middle of a messy divorce, and the poor boy was caught in the fallout of his father's disgrace. So in my new home, I made a sanctuary for him, a quiet, peaceful place for him to land away from all the noise. We started having meals together. I helped him with his homework. We tended to the new garden. He was my legacy now. He was the one I would pour my love and my resources into. I immediately rewrote my will, making sure that everything I had would go to him, to help build a future that his father had tried to steal from both of us. My victory wasn't just about me. With some of my reclaimed money, I started a small foundation to provide free legal help for other seniors fighting financial abuse. I had a powerful weapon now, my own experience, and I was going to use it to help others fight their own silent wars. Elder abuse can lead to terrible depression, anxiety, and even a higher risk of premature death. My new purpose was to give people hope, to show them that it is possible to fight back, and it is possible to win. I don't speak to Marcus. Forgiveness is a complicated, messy thing, and I haven't found it in my heart for him. Maybe I never will. But I have found something better. Peace. It's a peace that comes not from making up, but from being resilient. It's the peace you feel when you know you've faced the absolute worst kind of betrayal and walked out the other side into the sunlight, ready to plant a new garden. My story really could have ended in that sterile beige room. I could have been just another statistic, another older person whose light was snuffed out by abuse and neglect. But they completely underestimated my strength. They underestimated my will to live a life that was my own. My journey was a trip down into a nightmare, but it was also the story of climbing my way back out, stronger and more determined than ever. It's proof that dignity doesn't have an expiration date, and that the human spirit, when you push it, can claw its way out of any darkness. They thought they had buried me. They were wrong. They just didn't realize they had planted a seed. Thank you for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, please consider subscribing for more stories of resilience and justice. Like and share this video to help raise awareness about the silent epidemic of elder abuse. Every single share helps break the silence.